Good afternoon, everyone. We are here at Office Hours with David Meltzer, and I'm here with my mentor, my friend, my family, Blaine Bartlett, blainebartlett.com, and we are in support of the Unstoppable Foundation, the celebration of champions and everyone that is of giving and receiving intention. Come join us at Unstoppable, changing the world one person at a time. But we have an guest today here on Office Hours, live from the Indy 500. As I was running and eating, you can tell now, the CEO and president of Veyo, Josh Komenda. Thank you for joining us, and really wanted to talk in the same respect of Unstoppable about inspiration. And for the sake of what is what my mentor has taught me, and part of for the sake of what is the inspiration behind the what. And there must have been a unique understanding and inspiration when you started Veyo. Was wondering, at Veyo, what was that starting inspiration for you to create Veyo?
Yeah, well, first off, David, Blaine, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. I would say my kind of coming of age in my career was sort of in the mid 2000s, and I started my career at Qualcomm, sort of when 3G and 4G was sort of emerging. I've always been really inspired by not just the building of technology, but the capacity for technology to transform marketplaces and transform people's lives. And I think just being at Qualcomm, which was a great place to work in the mid 2000s, and just getting to see getting a preview of how the marketplace, these technologies will potentially unlock all these new market opportunities, right? So 4G was going to bring with it, ubiquitous tablets and GPS and all these technologies that could really transform all kinds of different marketplaces. And I started my first company, after I left Qualcomm, called Go Fast Cab, which was sort of an early player. It was a text message and then iPhone and Android app for ground transportation. And at the same time, as I started Go Fast Cab, Uber and Lyft kind of really, kind of got going around the same time. And I started getting a front row seat of these new technologies and how they were going to transform, bringing together or finding drivers, bringing together vehicles, and solving logistics and transportation problems in really innovative ways. And that got me really exciting. And obviously Uber and Lyft were sort of wild, disruptive success stories, transformed consumer ground transportation, but started exploring around and saying, look, there's got to be other problems out there that can be solved in a different way using these new technologies. And around 2013, 2014, really started learning about healthcare transportation and really seeing, hey, this is a really unique vertical of transportation. A lot of special requirements, regulatory. Serving those populations requires different capabilities and driver training, and saw a huge opportunity to kind of bring and bridge that gap. And so that's why we kind of conceived of bringing the first ride-sharing network designed to serve populations, healthcare populations.
Now, which I think brings to a very interesting point here, Josh. And I'm intrigued with the way that you're talking about inspiration here, because I actually make a distinction between inspiration and motivation. And inspiration tends to be externally organized. I see an opportunity and there's an inspiration for filling that hole. It's kind of like, motivation is an internal driver that keeps me connected. Okay. And people get those confused a lot of times. And I can't tell you the number of leaders I've crossed sabers with trying to convince them that motivation, you can't motivate somebody externally. You can only tap into that internal piece. So this idea of your core values, and this is kind of, I'm going to drop this in here, ride share in a healthcare space, getting people that need to get to a doctor's appointment, get to a medical appointment. The quality of care comes into play here in terms of the experience that they have sitting in this vehicle going to that place. How do you bring that as a value proposition to, number one, your drivers, number two, the folks that are actually scheduling, and I mean, just basically your employee staff, such that it translates into an uplifting experience for the patient that you're actually transporting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts with really understanding, why what we do is so important. And a lot of folks, I mean, and quite frankly, 10 or 12 years, I was one of them that almost knew nothing about non-emergency medical transportation. I didn't know what it was used for, who was using it, why it existed. But I got, extremely, to speak to your motivation point, I got extremely, the more we started learning, I'm like, hey, there's a whole segment of transportation out there where there's, hundreds of thousands, if not potentially millions of rides a day going on that are healthcare rides. And I just started learning more about it. And, for Medicaid members, Medicaid is the insurance plan for low-income folks in our country. Medicaid has, even since the 1960s, it's always said, low-income folks and folks on Medicaid, people living with chronic disease, are at risk for transportation failures and have a huge risk for missing healthcare because of transportation gaps. And sort of realizing, and then, since the 1960s, it's been declared that health Medicaid plans ought to help their members get there. I started learning more and more. And I think in the last 10 years, we've learned, as a society, we've learned with big data so much more about social determinants of health. What causes populations to be healthy or unhealthy? What are the environmental factors that contribute to disease and longevity, et cetera? And transportation is massively up there on the list. It's like number 2 or number 3 besides shelter and food. And so I started learning, I said, the better we can execute on these NEMT benefits, the better we can, improve people's lives dramatically, make our healthcare system work far better. So, people get to their appointments reliably. They have, better controlled, managed disease, few better outcomes, longer lives. And then it also makes things cheaper for the healthcare system and more efficient, right? The less you're treating disease, the healthier people are, the less you're spending on claims, and the less healthcare providers have empty seats when people can't get to their appointment. So all these benefits, and I started really crystallizing, saying, let's use technology and invest and make this work better and better and better. And that's what's motivated me and my team from day one. I think, early, starting and recruiting, some of the top tier technology talent, operations, sales and marketing folks back in 2015, 2016, my message was, let's change healthcare together. Our country's on an unsustainable path of healthcare costs, and the more levers we can find to improve lives, make the system work more efficiently, the better. And I think so many people that have come to work at Veyo would say that's what's motivating them to come work for us, as opposed to going to, other big tech like Google or Meta or whatever, right? So it's so compelling for folks. The drivers in our network, I mean, I just hear the most amazing stories of why so many of our independent drivers, sign up to contract to, hey, I want to drive and help people that really need this service. And there's just some amazing stories out there that I've heard.
I can't imagine. And Josh, I agree with my mentor there that motivation and inspiration are absolutely two different things. I describe them in different ways and utilize them in different ways by the mere fact that fear itself can motivate people. And I think in the scarce world of transportation, with unreliable service, difficulty with supply of service, non-transparent operations, and gas prices now adding on to fear, to interference, I've always looked at motivation and said, let's use motivation, like you said, to get started, to get up, to get back up, to get restarted. But shifting inspiration itself, regardless of whether it's internal or external in its impact or catalytic nature, inspiration is that this is an inspired business. It is about clearing the unreliable service issues. It's about clearing the difficulty of supply, clearing the non-transparent operations, clearing the issue with gas prices. for a greater good, to take care of those who have taken care of us, who have built our country to where it's at. And, in that respect, what are some of the things you're doing to be inspired, not just motivated to get people up, get them back up, but to get them there, literally and figuratively speaking, to get them there, considering there's all these things creating interference with the inspiration, not only of your business, but the actual inspiration of the connectivity of the process itself. What are some of the things you're doing to talk about these unreliable service and difficulties that exist?
I think the one of the important lessons that I've learned in this respect is to, even as our company has grown, is to really, really stay connected on the ground level. So it's always important to me to listen and talk to members, right? To go on ride-alongs in vehicles, to connect with the community, and recently I've flown around the country and attended some community meetings with the folks that depend on our service, with folks that work at assisted living facilities, really connecting with them, hearing their stories, hearing the challenges they face every day, and trying to work together and brainstorm and figure out how to always be solutioning together and always understanding their voice. So that keeps me going. I mean, creating change is hard. Creating innovation is hard. Healthcare, just given the type of industry it is and being highly regulated, it can be hard to make change in healthcare. But what keeps me inspired is continuing to get out there in the community, hear the success stories of things that are working, and then also being part of the community and staying very connected to the ground level.
So the idea of access, comes back into play here. And David, I mean, just the way that you kind of position some things here, anything that becomes has less friction involved in it, actually is easier for me to access and actually utilize. So the idea, there's an app, I'm assuming, that comes with Veyo. So as a consumer, if I've got a non-medical emergency and I need transport to my clinic, my doc, whatever it might be, I can just go use the app and book a ride. Is that essentially how this works?
Yes, essentially. I mean, we contract with health plans and state governments, and so basically, our contracts are with an insurance plan that's delivering Medicaid, and they contract with us and say, help us make sure that every one of our members can get to their appointments reliably. And so there's a lot of, if we're the provider for that health plan, then the member can call us, they can download an app. In some cases, they can interact with us on text message. A lot of times, we will also work with a lot of caseworkers, community workers, healthcare facilities. So there's, you can think about, Uber and Lyft have developed great consumer technology that it works well for a lot of consumers, but we serve populations with a wide variety of needs. Sometimes it's a nurse at a healthcare facility booking a ride. Sometimes it's a caseworker. Sometimes it's a family member. Sometimes it's a member themselves. Sometimes it's a parent. And so we provide. We've adapted, and that's part of the adaptations we made. We've adapted tools to make sure we're working well for those communities.
Great.
And I think it's a very motivational and inspirational business, which is, why I think it'll be a very successful business, especially with the market makers and the margins all growing in this space. The passion, purpose, and profitability should align with those three things very nicely. Josh, Komenda, it's incredible. Check them out. If you have those non-emergency medical transportation needs, go to Veyo. You can check them out, veyo.com. Josh, Komenda, thank you so much. I commend you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to meet you, and thanks for having me.
Good to see you.
Great having you on the show.
Thanks. Awesome. It's amazing. It just, the technology just keeps creating more and more value. And speaking of value, Sean Cain is here, and he's the director of career and performance at a small company called Disney General Entertainment Content. And he's been awarded and honored as a great mentor. And you're looking, Sean, by the way, at my mentor, a world business consultant, an author, speaker, an extraordinary coach, mentor, and teacher, Blaine. And for you, at such a young age, to be, promoted as such and admired. What has been working for the Walt Disney Company? The biggest lesson as a mentor. It seems to me that they have so many systems and operations, and especially in a corporate culture, probably known as one of the strongest corporate cultures, to utilize mentoring in today's age of teaching, coaching, and mentoring virtually and in person. What are some of the lessons that you've learned that some of the older, bogeys like Blaine and I, in a more traditional sense, where we, have those 4-day workshops and the masterminds, meaning, I'm at one right now. Things have really changed, and I see great mentors like yourself at great companies like Disney utilizing the culture and the technology today to really engage employees and teach them in a much more efficient way.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really do appreciate it, and it's good to connect with like-minded folks. David, I got to say very quickly, the other day, one of my dear friends on Instagram was sharing a video of you talking about resiliency and grit, and I said, "Hey, love the messaging. It's absolutely fabulous." And the beauty of the word "no," I think, was the message itself. I think the first lesson for all of us, regardless of whether you're an old fogey or otherwise, is to think about mentoring as quite simply relationship building. And that theme is universal. That need is universal, right? And it could be for countless reasons in the workplace. A multi-generational workforce like Disney has really values relationship building too, for skills transfers, and onboarding, and certainly talent mobility. And I think that's been the drumbeat that we've been really working on, is to demystify the concept of mentoring from the traditional notion of senior leader connecting with junior leader to bring them through the ranks, and more of a flat relationship building exercise where we each bring value to each other in some way, shape, or form, right? It allows us to stay at the top of the marketplace. It allows us to think about the kinds of IP that folks around the world and from all different backgrounds are going to really resonate with. And in small ways, right, it's going to help us figure out how to use our devices. If you've got some brand newfangled device and you need some assistance with it, I mean, the gifts here are limitless. And I think the other really important thing that we've tried to do is to think about downstream value adds. Where can we take relationship building, and how do we do that with technology and make sure it's scalable? And that's what we're trying to roll out now.
Yeah, I love the way that you frame this, Sean. The way I define an organization, it's a pretty simple definition. It's just a collection of people that are in relationship.
Right.
That's all any organization is. And if the relationships are working well, you got a pretty good shot at being successful. Now, when most people hear that, they kind of go, well, yeah, duh. But it's also much more than what most people assume. It's not just the interpersonal relationship. It's in a relationship with vision, values, relationship with work, relationship with this computer, this screen. Everything has a relational component to it.
Right.
And yeah, I've developed some mentoring programs for some of the largest companies on the planet. And I'm very interested from your perspective. How has your focus on relationship translated beyond the interpersonal so that people are actually mentoring around the intangibles, the relationships that people have with these intangibles? Yeah. How have you brought that into play?
We've really tried to live in the moment. And right now, the moment requires us to really sort of come to the table and figure out how we're more alike than apart. And how can we create an inclusive, equitable environment? And we've really tried to double down on ways that people can bring their authentic selves to these conversations to build relationships, looking at personality components and the kinds of communities that they might be involved in. And so, beyond the initial how do you do is the small talk, there's a baked in sense of camaraderie and shared purpose and vision, right? And with that sense of trust and with that sense of shared purpose, the sky's the limit for the takeaways. And we intentionally try to just build a sandbox and say, you decide the sandcastles that come out of this. We're not going to script this to the extent that, every day, every week, there's a different topic to focus on. We're just going to make sure that you've got a space to play, that you connect, and then watch the beauty happen. And one of my favorite stories at my previous institution, Fox, 21st Century Fox, we had a very senior leader in one of our regional offices. He had a junior mentee in a corporate ad sales office. He thought, of course, he was going to show the world to this person, but they hit it off. And he emailed me and my then leader at the time and said, hey, Sean, I've got this weird idea. Would it be all right if I flew her, my mentee, on my dime to my regional office to upskill my entire sales team on ad sales? We said, oh, it's an awful idea. It's beautiful. This kind of stuff is exactly what we hope emerges, right? All of a sudden, this junior quote unquote colleague now has this amazing learning experience, and the business grows as a result because his team is getting skilled upward, right? So the intangibles, we just construct a strong environment, double down on the different dimensions of personality, and let the magic happen.
Yeah.
It's another surrender experience at a different level, which I really enjoy, of having, focus on the skills, the knowledge, but also allowing the desires of people to collaborate and coordinate together for a greater good. But one of the key aspects, as far as pragmatic, quantifiable business, and a lot of people may overlook this as we look into sports and entertainment as an industry, or specifically companies like Disney, is their businesses, right? They would not be here but for the fact that they're very profitable businesses that have grown immensely over the years. And I always have said the reason Disney was successful, is successful, and will be successful is that they're one of the largest companies that have great engagement with their employees. And I see, as I have done equal due diligence on you, that you are masterful at getting people to engage. And the analogy I use in sports is, everybody would love Tom Brady on their team, but if Tom Brady didn't like to play and he didn't want to play, or he was hurt and he was always sitting on the bench, Brady could be a bad thing on your team. But of course, Tom Brady is completely engaged, which is why he has played for so long and continues to play at such a high level. I think engagement's the most critical business issue. I don't care about retention, recruitment. I would spend more time today on who we have and double the amount of engagement because we have such low engagement.
Right.
What are some of the things that you've been able to do as a mentor to help with the most critical of all business issues? Because I feel we have so much skill, so much knowledge, and so much desire within our workforce in America that we just got to get more people engaged in what they're doing. What are you doing for that enhancement to create the productivity, accessibility, and gratitude within an organization?
David, you hit me right in my soul, because I'm a diehard, lifelong Kansas City Chiefs fan, born and raised in the Midwest. And I come back to this time and again because old Tom Brady has broken my heart not once, but twice in two different uniforms. Oh, man, does it get under my skin. But I have to continually come back to Tom as an example, tying directly to your question here. Because as you know, Tom is the greatest of all time now. But he was buried in the depths of the 6th round in his draft, right? Mm-hmm. Folks had preconceived notions of who was the best in that year, and Tom had a hunger, he had a drive. What he lacked was opportunity, really, to thrive and to shine in those earlier rounds. And of course, 20 odd years later, we're still paying the price for our hubris, right? And so I think the answer to your question about engagement is democratizing opportunity. Look through the ranks into the 6th round, if you will, to figure out who those future GOATs are, the Patrick Mahomes of the world, right? And if we can democratize opportunity and think about it more of as a flat hierarchy, right, versus the traditional sort of GE, Jack Welch command and control module, what you then find are these amazing folks, these diamonds in the rough, right? I got to understand who I work with, diamonds in the rough, that are just hiding out there. And if they've got the access, the engagement is a natural outcome of that. So what we promote is a real genuine, authentic community where, regardless of your standing, your pedigree, your background, your place in our business, you have equal access to our leaders through our mentoring programs, right? So in short, democratizing opportunity is the key in my estimation.
You know, I came across a study not too long ago for some work I was doing. Worldwide, I think there's about 43 to 46 billion dollars annually spent on leadership development, with the objective being to move that engagement needle off of the disengagement. I think is about 84%, 87%, globally on the planet.
It's not a small number.
Not a small number. Retention is handled by engagement. Recruiting is handled by engagement. Leaders today, in my estimation, and this is what I'm thrilled about what you're doing with this whole mentoring exercise, because it takes the focus away from what was traditionally thought of as leadership, which is do what I say I need to have done. How do I get people to do what I need to have done that they don't want to do? I mean, all of that, stuff. And it starts looking at how do I actually open the opportunity up for people to naturally be motivated. By motivated, I'm saying engaged in what they're doing in a way that translates into retention, into productivity, into results, into thriving, not just surviving.
Yeah, right. So true.
We're spending money on the wrong place because people are looking at the wrong thing. It's a question of engagement, not anything other than that. And I love how you're positioning this, Sean. I really do. I think this is absolutely spot on. And it's not an accident you're doing it at Disney, by the way.
Oh. Well, look, I mean, I couldn't agree more, first of all. And we frame it just slightly differently. I think there's a long-standing preconceived notion of who are capable leaders and where does leadership come from. And I'm a Gallup strengths coach. I think that if we can spend more time divorcing the concept of pedigree from potential and looking more at talent, right, as a harbinger of success versus, where somebody might traditionally have come up through the ranks, and you nurture that talent and you put that talent in a place to thrive, aligning people's natural gifts and abilities in a way that they're going to knock it out of the park. Yeah. I mean, Gallup's got 80 years of research that says if you're just using what you're good at, you're going to be 9% more productive annually. You're going to be more engaged and productive. Of course, the business wins as a result, right? Yep. Leadership is not a personality trait. Leadership is an outcome of somebody being truly motivated, engaged, and giving more than they thought they would otherwise be able to.
Give me 5. That's great. I love that. Give me 5.
I was going to say there's no doubt why Sean is being honored in so many different ways, including Mentoring Champion of the Year in 2021, understanding with an open mind and open heart and open hands how we can take the activity that we get paid for and allow people within the context of one of the biggest, most well-known industries, one of the biggest and most well-known companies in the world, to be passionate every day, to be purposeful every day. And yes, it is a business, to be profitable as well. Allow you as an intelligent follower to help lead others, to elevate others, to be their best and live to their potential within the context of activity we get paid for. Check out Sean Cain. This is what we want to do. He's on LinkedIn, Sean M. Cain. He's the Director of Career and Performance, honored and at Disney, of course. Thanks. We look forward to bigger and better things, more than just you, Sean. I'm looking to see in the next decade people say, oh yeah, I was mentored by Sean Cain. And that's my and Blaine's biggest success is as we get older and older, wow, look where these guys are in the commitment and the impact and the changes that they're making for the better. We appreciate you and we expect great things. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Sean.
Awesome
Great talking with you.
He has a theater arts background, so it was so much fun to interview him, right? He's just so enthusiastic and articulate, and it was just a joy to interview him. I liked everything about him except for he's a Chiefs fan, and as you know, Lee represents Mahomes, but we'll see what he's about. Tyreek, that's what I say. Don't forget, my business partner Warren Moon was a quarterback there in Kansas City.
Quarterback there as well. Yep.
Favorite players. So we got to give him some cred, but Justin Herbert. Now we're talking about the next GOAT. He's an Oregon guy, so I know Blaine.
He's an Oregon guy. Hey.
He's a Duck. All right. Last but not least, and here we go, back in what we're doing. Our favorite city, the City of Angels,
City of
where
Angels.
Blaine and I both have lived, and we have our newest candidate running for the Los Angeles City Attorney, one that is a very valuable and important position. Sherri, Onica, Valle Cole, and Sherri, welcome to Office Hours.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I hope you can hear me and you can see me.
We can hear.
I'm a little ragged at it after teaching 8th grade.
Well, it's
Wow.
it's amazing.
My
And,
hero.
you know, I have one question, because I grew up and I wanted to be president of the United States, and many of my friends wanted to be president of the United States, and I have 4 children, and I always ask, you know, hey, what do you guys want to do when you're older? What do you want to be? And you know, none of them or their friends have any aspiration to be president of the United States, and I don't blame them, by the way, and I understand it, but I'm always admiring people that run for city office, for public service, especially as a city attorney. And so, obviously, you're a teacher, a lawyer, and an extreme socially impactful person. But what is it that motivates you? Because it's underpaid and overworked to work for the city, especially as the city attorney. Why is it you want to be the city attorney?
Just think that we are in a time right now where we really need people to step up, people who are invested in the system. God has graced me to be a lot of things, including a mom, wife of an LAPD officer. And we were talking about a lot about policing, police brutality, excessive force. We are talking about what to do with the unshelters of our streets. I was unsheltered as a child growing up. And a lot of the issues I feel are just calling to my heart. My husband and I looked at each other. We met on the job. Los Angeles gave me my family. I met my husband on the job. He looked really sexy in a uniform going through a window. So I'm not going to make any apologies that, yes, I am all about they asked me about a show, LAPD Housewives. Maybe that's in my future, but, and I'm an African-American, Mexican-American, English-speaking, United States citizen, but I'm very familiar with the undocumented community and the concerns there. And I'm also an insider, if you will, of law enforcement. And I just feel like there is such a huge disconnect, and we've just got to change this. I mean, I was in an event yesterday where civil liberties met, battery. And we've got to be able to conversate with one another in a way that's intelligent and moves the needle forward. I'm a mom of 2. My second has autism. I'm a teacher by day. And I am teaching really in a way that is very different than the way I was raised. I am of a very different school. I was physically disciplined. My husband and I both sat down. We talked about it, and we said, we don't want to put hands on our children, but we still want to raise good children.
Yep, we just lost your audio there, Sherri.
Oh no, we lost Sherri's
audio.
No. While we're waiting for Sherri to come back on, Blaine, did you ever have any aspirations of being a public service president or some other sort of position?
President.
Yeah. Wouldn't you say that most kids, it was one of the top 3s that, when we were young, people say, what do you want to be? And there was president or, doctor or fire truck.
Yeah, literally. Yep.
I always liked the kids that wanted to be the fire truck.
Fire truck. They were, yeah.
Why, do you think that a lot of, are we ready? Oh, my, let her back in. There we go. Sorry, Sherri, you were saying as a mom and understanding the insider track in not only public service, but particularly, obviously, in the criminal realm as a prosecutor yourself and working for the city, and your husband working and being of service, by the way. Tell him thank you as well for his service.
Every night, every day, and every night, and I will continue to do so, and for everyone, because I do think it is a unique opportunity and responsibility.
And your website's Coal for Change. So I'd love for you to kind of tell us what changes, because I'm humbly ignorant, and I wouldn't know how to solve this issue, because I just try my best to teach people kindness and to use their own, skills. But I'd love for you to share with us some of the changes with your experience and insight that you can make, as our city attorney.
Well, I spent 16 years in the office, and I'm the only candidate who's actually prosecuted misdemeanors in the office. I have more trial experience, both civil and criminal, than anyone else in my race. And what I've learned from that is that about 30% of those that we are cycling either off of our streets or into our misdemeanor criminal justice system is someone suffering from mental illness and or part of our recovery community. And I really want to get them out of our system. We have a very compacted, congested court system already before the pandemic. Things have just gotten, astronomically worse since. And we're going to have a tsunami of evictions and foreclosures. We really need someone who has experience to kind of get people out and really focus on what I call the root causes. Like we need to talk, like I talk about my students today, why do we take substances? What is underneath us that we need to dig into and really resolve? And that conversation, from my perspective as a teacher and a mother, needs to start from Unity High. Let's stop stigmatizing mental illness and let's treat it. We have, a long history of schizophrenics with late diagnosis. And if we can get 30% out of our system and off of our streets, I think that would be a huge improvement. We need to talk about, police brutality and excessive force and the isms in the room, the elephants in the room. And I want to address that. I do think there is a concept of white privilege, and we need to dig deep. But I also think that embracing just a wholesale, a Gascon approach, if you will, shows a lack of understanding of the system. Our system is greatly nuanced. It takes a lot of experience and understanding to basically negotiate and enforce misdemeanors in a way that I believe is fair and equitable.
Part of your platform has to do with transforming law enforcement. And as the wife of an LAPD officer, and you kind of come in with a very, I think, useful perspective on this. How would you, and I mentioned, transforming law enforcement. I'm up here in Seattle, and that has been a big agenda item, both for, the King County Sheriff's Department as well as the Seattle Police Department here, transforming the way that policing is done. What's your take on what that looks like? What needs to be transformed?
We need to take the good things that we have and seen around the nation and implement it here in Los Angeles. For example, we have something here called the Mental Evaluation Unit, but unfortunately it's very underfunded and it's limited in perspective. So I would take that program and do that all around the city. I would also feel like we need to employ de-escalation tactics. What happens in LA is spread and watched throughout the city. We saw that with George Floyd, with our experts actually being called as experts, even though they weren't recipient witnesses or trainers in that particular case. So if we change LAPD, we change the nation in terms of policing. I would like to see, as a mother of a special needs little boy, I would like to see LAPD really embrace some de-escalation tactics. And for that, they need training. They need understanding and compassion. I'm the woman that, gave my husband a couple of Advils and a good foot massage to go deal with civil rights protests here as a result of the George Floyd arrest. And one of the things that he really talks about is the complaints about excessive force really arising from individuals who had not been in the field. So LA has been the site of numerous protests over the years, including an uprising, a rebellion, I don't know what you want to call it, in 1992 as a result of the Simi Valle, the Rodney King verdict.
Rodney King, yeah.
And you've got coppers, if I just can be a little frank, with no experience about what to do with some of the equipment that they have. And they're shooting directly into civilians when they're supposed to be bouncing that off of the walls or ground. And that's just inexperience. Institutional knowledge is important. We've been rushing our officers off the streets. I'm very happy of that because I'm a wife, and my husband is also a father to our two beautiful kids. But institutional knowledge and patience comes with time on the job. Give me a 24-year, 25-year veteran. That's gold to me. That's gold to me as an expert, as somebody who can testify, as someone who has the patience to step back from a situation and really implement tactics. A lot of the police shootings that we see are coppers, in that mid-range. I call it the 10 to 15 period, where you have enough experience, where you feel confident, but not enough that you still are potentially dangerous. So we really need to break down what is going wrong. Do we need to give them more breaks? I mean, I've said crazy things like 410s. Here in LA, they were doing the 410s. Do we want to continue doing 410s, or do they need that fifth day to kind of reset and regroup? As a wife, I see it from the inside and with love and concern in my eyes. And also just realize that when coppers are okay, then we're all okay.
There you go.
It's amazing. I would say that there's no other candidate that has that inside perspective. You are a longtime former criminal prosecutor, so you understand the job thoroughly. A teacher, so you understand the true prioritization of our children and the inner workings, especially with mental health, and not only how a child themselves perceive things, but the exposure they have to things and what effect or impact it has on mental health of families. And of course, you're a mother of two, married to a police officer as well. And being someone as a woman and as a minority as well, I can't think of a better candidate, which was why Blaine and I wanted to have you on for our hometown there in Los Angeles, to make sure that we have somebody that actually cares about the issues and has great ideas with some insight, some experience, and situational knowledge instead of just a political agenda. And I think, if you want the greater good candidate, if you want a candidate who really has the experience and insight, go to coalforchange.com. Make sure you get out everybody, no matter who you're supporting, and make sure that you vote. We are given a freedom. Let's exercise that freedom every chance we have to make choices that are representative of our values. Sherri, she is definitely representative of my values, and certainly appreciate you taking the time to share your ideas and experience with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and God bless you both. Stay safe,
Thank
everyone.
You bet, Sherri. Take care.
Very cold. Remember the name. Running for Los Angeles City Attorney. All right, Mr. Double B, BlaineBartlett.com. We got the Unstoppable Celebration of Champions. Go to unstoppablechampions.org or unstoppablecelebration.org. I don't know what my problem is when it comes to that website. It's like brianbogert.com. Anyway, Blaine.
It's all the F1 noise in your IndyCar noise in your ears here.
Oh my gosh, if you only knew. I was at the White Sox game last night speaking to the White Sox staff, and really want to extend a personal thank you because it was an extraordinary evening there for the White Sox, and we brought a little bit of luck to them. They beat the Red Sox. Both teams obviously can beat the Dodgers, right, Matt? Anyway, Blaine, what's your takeaway for the day? What's your takeaway for the day?
Takeaway today, I'm going to land it on relationship and just kind of build off of that. Yeah, Josh, the work that they do with transporting folks to healthcare. I mean, there's a relationship involved with that. Sean's work in mentoring is all relationship oriented, and certainly Sherri's work as a candidate for city attorney. I mean, when you start looking at law enforcement and just actually how society is put together, our laws, our mores all come into play, and those are all functions of relationship. And I mentioned this when we were talking to Sean. Everything is a relationship. Everything is a relationship. And if the relationships are working well, you got a pretty good shot at being successful in life. And it's not just the interpersonal relationship. So the invitation I'm going to have as part of my takeaway today for folks is to pay attention to the relationships that you are engaged with on an ongoing basis, and not just, the interpersonal. Your relationship with your thoughts, your relationship with your notion of success, your relationship with your notion of what it means to be uncomfortable, because discomfort is a byproduct of growth. And if you're not, if you don't have a good relationship with discomfort, you're not going to grow. And it's all about relationship. So if you can kind of frame it in that way, I think you're going to have a pretty good shot of having a ongoing, sustainably successful life.
Agreed 100%. Once again, the wisdom just flowing from my buddy, Blaine Bartlett, BlaineBartlett.com. For me, it was difficult, but I think it's a very simple takeaway for today. No matter what you do, and we had a very diverse guest list today. A lot of times there's just this obvious general theme, and it's really fun and complementary and analogous of one another. But I think the similarities today is that no matter what you do, whether you work for Qualcomm and then create your own app about non-emergency medical transportation, or you work for Disney and you mentor people in careers, or you're a mother, teacher, city attorney, wife of a cop, running for office, no matter, this is a very diverse group. No matter what you do good. And I think the one thing that resonated with me of all these extraordinary guests that we've had is they all really had only one intent. And, Josh is highly corporate, working for Qualcomm in the 2000s. I'm sure has multiple opportunities to make a lot of money, but he chose to do good and make money. Obviously, Sean has many opportunities. We didn't even talk about his Wharton Fellowship and all the other capacities as an actor. But all he really wants to do is do good. And of course, I think most of all, it was obvious with Sherri, who blew me away with her experience, background. I don't know, if you don't think the moms of the world are the most extraordinary human beings, I thought, in my life, I've never seen someone like my mom. But you got a mom of two who has, a former prosecutor who teaches and is a wife of a first responder. That's a lot. And she only wants to do one thing: do good. So my takeaway is for everyone: do good, be kind to your future self, and do good. And one of those lessons I've learned from my mentor, who always does his best to do good, is Blaine Bartlett. And if you want to do good, please support us at the Unstoppable Foundation, unstoppablecelebration.org. Be a champion, celebrate yourself as a champion, learn that giving is the greatest gift that you will ever receive. Unstoppablecelebration.org. Blaine Bartlett on the board with me, his wife, Cynthia, the founder of the Unstoppable Foundation. We are committed to doing good. Have a great day and have fun, Blaine. Thanks so much.
You bet, my friend. Have a great time at the race.
It won't be hard. All right. The blessed of the blessed. And I certainly am blessed, and I'm not taking for granted what I dreamed of someday and other people dream of still today. I want to thank everybody. Remember, most importantly, be more interested than interesting. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.